to yourself. I am more than my physical body. Because I am more than physical matter, I can perceive that which is greater than the physical world. I deeply desire to expand, to experience, to know, to understand, to control, to use such greater energies and energy systems as may be beneficial and constructive to me and to those who follow me. I deeply desire the help and cooperation, the assistance, the understanding of those individuals whose wisdom, development, and experience are equal to or greater than my own. I ask their guidance and protection from any influence or any source that might provide me with less than my stated desires.
I do not know all the answers to the questions about reality. I do not claim to know the ultimate truth about time. I seek that which has been made hidden as a part of a family of explorers of consciousness. I'm the void one.
Welcome to Lighting the Void.
Oh, broadcasting live from a shack on a hill in the Mossy Creek bottoms of Cane Creek, Arkansas. This is Lighting the Void Live. It is Wednesday, December the 4th, 2024. And we're already, I am massively late again. I apologize. But it is what it is, right? Here's the thing. We got to get to a certain support level, guys, in order for us to do this 3 nights a week, or it's going to shrink to 2. That's just the way it works. But I will say that we're already there. I mean, we're so close to being there. It's stupid anyway, so it doesn't mean we don't need much, and we usually hit it, so nobody freak out. Besides, I'm always doing something online anyway, so this show isn't going to go anywhere. I had another person say, "Man, please don't quit." Nobody's quitting. Where do you guys get this stuff from? If somebody, I'm serious. Like, you guys got to tell me. Is somebody messaging you and saying, "Oh, I think this guy's going to quit, or he's going to go somewhere, or who's saying this stuff to you?" Right? Like, just ignore them. Nobody's quitting. We're doing this for years, man. Nobody's going to stop doing it. You don't stop doing what you love. Why would I? So I hope you're doing what you love. If you're not, that's pretty sad. All right. So today, nothing to worry about. The only thing that kind of trips me out that happened was watching the news today, and this United Healthcare assassin. I don't know if you guys saw this guy or not, but this guy looks like someone bought him straight off of the dark web, doesn't it? This dude in a black hoodie with a backpack with a change of clothes, just riding around on a bicycle, rolls up behind the CEO of the United Healthcare, pulls out a gun with a silencer on it, doesn't really care who's around, and just plugs the guy and kills him. It's terrible. And they haven't found him. But this has dark web written all over it. I'm just saying, it does. This doesn't have CIA or anything like that. Usually no one's going to be on camera or anything unless somebody from the CIA bought, an assassin off the dark web. But this looks like some kid off the dark web just says, okay, I'll take the job, you know. And they still haven't caught him. So, pretty strange. I don't know why. I don't know why anybody would want to kill him, but there is a $10,000 reward for any information leading to his capture. So if you're hurting, you can go in the business of finding this assassin. All right. Other than that, everything's cool. I don't think there's anything to worry about. I just thought it was trippy because when I'm starting to watch the news again. But when I pulled it up, when I saw this guy, it looked like something out of a video game. And some of you know, during the late nights, like Jay and Sudi came by and said, "What's up?" late last night too, while we were playing video games, streaming. This assassin looked like it came straight out of a video game, man. Did you guys see it? Did you see that? Inside trading, probably could be. But who knows? But this show isn't about that. I just like to talk about the news sometimes because that's a freaky thing that happened. This show is about the void, walking into the void, the outer body experience. So I would say this is probably the last text that we're going to do for a while, just for a little while. I know some of you are enjoying the text, but I've got to shake things up every now and then. We might still do it though. But this one is an important one. This one was written in 1983. D. Scott Rogo. Now, just so you know who this guy was or is or whatever, he serves on the graduate faculty or served on the graduate faculty of John F. Kennedy University in Orinda, California. He worked as a visiting researcher at the former Division of Parapsychology and Psychophysics of Maimonides Medical Center in Brooklyn, New York, and the looks like Psychical Research Foundation in Durham, North Carolina. He's written a whole lot of books on the paranormal and was a consultant for Fate magazine. Isn't that cool that this stuff was, I just think this is cool that this stuff was going on in the 80s heavily. We think it wasn't because, I think it wasn't because I was a kid in the 80s, but it was. It really was. This book was published in 1983. Leaving the Body, a complete guide to astral projection, a step-by-step presentation of 8 different systems of out-of-body travel. D. Scott Rogo. Now, I meant to get deep into this last night, but I just went on one of those stupid rants, you know. I was frustrated, and we didn't get there. We didn't get done with it, or we didn't even get done with chapter 1. But let's see, where do we leave off? We might overlap here. Yeah. So here's a story. Now, before we tell the story, Scott goes on to say that the out-of-body experience is different from these anomalies of perception in one great and vastly important way. It's veridical. This is a new word for me, veridical, or truth-telling. If you were to leave the body and travel to a location miles away, you might be able to correctly see what's going on there. And this aspect of the out-of-body experience takes it out of the hands of the psychiatrist and into those of the parapsychologist and those scientists who study the strange byways of psychic phenomena. Here's a story. Take the following instance. This was sent to Celia Green of the Institute of Psychophysical Research in Oxford, England. The sender was a woman who had just had an operation for peritonitis, which is when the complications had set in and pneumonia had developed. And she, since she was in an L-shaped ward, she could see nothing beyond the bend in the hallway. And one morning the woman writes, "I felt myself floating upwards and I found I was looking down on the rest of the patients. I could see myself propped up against pillows, very white and ill. And I saw the sister and nurse rush to my bed with oxygen. And while out of the body, she saw a woman down the hall sitting up in bed." This was a location beyond the capability of her physical view. We talked about this yesterday. The patient had bandages wrapped around her head and was knitting something with blue wool. She had a very red face. The astonished out-of-body traveler even was able to see the time that was registered on a broken clock on a wall near the patient. Now, when people say that this is lucid dreaming, what up, Jay? What's up, brother? When people say that this is Christy Belly, how you doing? And the lurkers. Are we going to get a new lurker come out? What's up, Purple Pencils? That'd be cool if a new lurker said hi today. Right? Anyways, if this had been a lucid dream, would she have been able to see the clock, the exact time on it? I don't think so. I don't think you can see that because when I've done lucid dream stuff, clocks are fuzzy or they don't make sense, backwards at the very least, but not able to tell the time. But I got to be honest with you, I haven't looked at a clock. Unless you guys have, I have not looked at a clock being out of body. By the way, if you want to call in tonight too while we're going through this text at any point in time, number's 501-777-5631. 501-777-5631. Call if you want to talk to Joe Roop on Lighting the Void. Let's see. The nurse on duty was quite shocked when her patient revived and reported these events. I told her what happened, the woman explained in her letter, but at first she thought I was rambling. The woman went on to say that this certainly shook her. Apparently, the lady concerned had a mastoid operation and was just as I described. She was not allowed out of bed, and of course I hadn't been up at all. And after several other details, such as the time by the clock on the wall, which had broken down, I convinced her at least something strange had happened. Such veridical OBEs are not unusual and have been commonly reported for years. Even though the physical body may seem unconscious during the experience, the participant's mind is often capable of making accurate and detailed observations from their out-of-body perspective. For example, here's another one. Another one of Green's correspondents had an OBE during a fainting spell at a party. That freaks me out. I don't know about, you know how some people can just pass out and they're like, oh, it's okay. I'm deathly afraid of passing out. I hate it. Matter of fact, when I was younger, it was one of the reasons why I quit doing MMA. Like, I loved mixed martial arts and Brazilian jiu-jitsu. It was like my favorite thing to do. We did it at least twice a week. But once you get to that place where you're about to black out or get knocked out, it gets pretty freaky. I have some kind of weird phobia about it. I don't like it. Let's see. Okay. So one moment I was at a party. This is one of Green's correspondences, but I was at a party and one moment I felt hot, she explained. And the next I was looking down at a figure lying face down on the floor, and I seemed to be quite high up. And then I realized the figure that was laying down on the floor was my body. It was me. I saw my body being picked up. I could distinguish clearly individual people and what they were doing. I saw the main lights go on, and then just suddenly I was back again in the body. So she saw that for a second, right? What's up, Cosmic? I was able to note people's actions, and afterwards I told them their exact movements, which they confirmed. I was a little embarrassed by having fainted, and my partner told me no one had noticed as the main lights in the hall were out. However, I saw the lights go on and someone fetch a chair. The woman's partner had to admit that these observations were totally correct. Of course, lying in a hospital bed with pneumonia or fainting at a dance are not exactly the most pleasant experiences in the world. And people don't want to have to do this to have an out-of-body experience, right? But this isn't necessary to happen to undergo such ordeals to have an out-of-body experience. Many people experience them quite naturally while they fall asleep or while meditating through auto-hypnosis, etc. There are even techniques by which one can allegedly learn to leave the body, and this is, of course, the main theme of what we're talking about here. Some people experience their out-of-body self as an apparitional double of the physical body and may even see a thread-like cord connecting the two organisms. See, this person acknowledges some people see the cord, some people don't. Others merely experience themselves as a speck or a ball of light, or simply float about totally disembodied. Parapsychological thinking about this issue has changed somewhat over the years, and many researchers of the past felt that OBEs were very rare occurrences, quite outside the range of normal human experiences. And this view probably arose from the fact that very few people ever spoke about any OBEs that they might have had. And since little was known about the experience, most individuals were embarrassed by them. And many feared being labeled crazy by friends and relatives if they began talking about it or about being out of the body. Yeah, I mean, a lot of times people got sent to the psych ward for that stuff. The idea that the OBE was a rare experience, something only happening to great mystics or powerful psychics, was unfortunately reconfirmed when a few psychics actually did start writing about their habitual OBEs. Perhaps the first, and I've never heard of these people either, I got to check this out, but perhaps the first was Hugh Calloway, who's a British occultist who began publishing accounts of his many OBEs in a series of articles he presented to the Occult Review beginning in 1920. Writing under the pseudonym of Oliver Fox, Calloway wrote not only of his spontaneous out-of-body experiences, but also how he trained himself to induce them. At the same time, Calloway was traveling light in England. The French mystic Marcel Louis Ferrand, or Urim, was experimenting with astral projection and working on his Le Médecin de l'Âme. I probably said that wrong. My French sucks. Which appeared in English as Practical Astral Projection. And this book, see, there's another book we got to check out right there. These are old texts, man. If it's in the 20s, it's old, okay? So this book, like Calloway's, was written under a pseudonym. Both these adventurers wrote of the classic OBEs, travels to fourth dimensional worlds, encounters with non-human creatures and mystical masters. And to those readers who did not merely dismiss Calloway and Urim as romantics pulling the legs of the public, it must have seemed as though only very special and gifted occultists could have out-of-body experiences or should even try. In the 1930s, things began to change. Yeah, one of our favorite books hit the scene, right? The whole idea of astral projection was popularized by Sylvan Muldoon, a sickly youth living in a small town in Wisconsin who began writing his own matter-of-fact accounts of his many OBEs. His first volume, The Projection of the Astral Body, appeared in 1929. Written in simple, straightforward language, it lacked the gaudy occult overtones and metaphysics that had saturated his predecessor's writings. I think it was Tamishi. Man, I forget who it was in the Discord that said they really liked Muldoon's style because he was straight to the point, straightforward. Yeah. Muldoon even advised his readers on how to induce OBEs for themselves. And to prove that the OBE was a human potential and not some explicit psychic gift, Muldoon began collecting the accounts of normal, everyday people who had experienced one or maybe two OBEs during the course of their daily lives. These accounts, which he published in 2 lengthy books, were very different from the arcane accounts of Calloway and others. They simply told how the percipients left their bodies momentarily under a variety of conditions, floated about, perhaps even visited a friend or two, and then returned to their bodies, none the worse for the experience. The tales were markedly undramatic. Muldoon's work was thus the first serious attempt to demonstrate that the out-of-body experience may be a commonly experienced phenomenon, attainable by just about anybody, and certainly more common than anyone had hitherto expected. During the 1960s, Muldoon's point and approaches were expanded by Dr. Robert Krukal, a British geologist with a strong interest in parapsychology, and when he, too, started collecting accounts of OBs experienced by the general public during the decade from 1961 to 1971, he collected and published some 750 cases. Never heard of that guy either. Well, that's a lie. I mean, I did when I read this book before. It's been a while since I read this book. But what I'm saying is I never looked those books up. which maybe I will now. So it now seems that the out-of-body experience is at least as common as many other garden variety psychic experiences, such as telepathic hunches, precognitive dreams, and other forms of extrasensory phenomena that so many of us experience now and then. But just how common OBE seemed to occur came to light only when a handful of researchers began polling the general public about the experience, and they were in for a shock. Yeah, I always wondered that. Like, when did any researchers or scientists finally come out and say, "Hey, man, let's just start talking to the general public and see what's going on," you know, if this is a real thing. So Dr. Hornell Hart, a sociologist at Duke University in North Carolina, he conducted the first such survey in the early 1950s and published his results in 1954. He asked 155 Duke students about the OBE, or out-of-body experience, and found that 27% of them had undergone at least one such incident sometime during their lives. During the 1960s, Celia Green conducted similar surveys in England. She polled 150 students at Southampton University. 19% admitted having personal experiences with the out-of-body experience. Green learned that Oxford students were even more familiar with the out-of-body experience, and when 380 students were also questioned, a whopping 34% began talking about their projection experiences. Studies conducted during the past few years have borne out of the results of these surveys, and Dr. Susan Blackmore at the University of Surrey in England found that 11% of the 132 students she polled in 1978 had experienced at least one OBE, while Dr. Erlander Haraldsson and his colleagues in Iceland learned that 8% of some 902 adults polled in their homeland admitted to having such experiences. I'm starting to get a little upset because all of these places are coming from Europe. Did we not have one? Not that I care, you know, I'm not that biased, but did we not have one American, like from the United States, that was questioning this? These all European people? Let's see. Here we go. Dr. John Palmer of the University of Virginia in Charlottesville sent out questionnaires asking the public about any psychic experiences they may have had. Of the 268 students who returned the questionnaires, 25% reported OBEs, 14% of the 354 adults who filled out the form also admitted having them. And in 1980, there was another survey by Dr. Harvey Irwin at the University of New England in Australia. He questioned 170 Australian students about any possible OBEs they may have had, and some 20% answered affirmatively. Now, if we add up all this data and draw a natural implication, it appears that roughly 1 out of every 5 people will undergo an out-of-body experience at some time during their life. That's a big number. And considering if this number still stays true and there's 8.5 billion people on the planet, well, that ought to tell you, I still don't understand why it's not. I mean, do you guys think it's a bigger subject? It's a bigger subject maybe now than it used to be, right? Christy Billy says, hey, all those university-funded government studies are MK Ultra. Could be. Could be. These statistics contain both implications and limitations, of course, and they certainly indicate that the OBE is not a rare occult experience, and it seems to be common. It seems to be common. It can occur under a variety of conditions and does not seem to be like exotic as many of the older occult writers made it appear. On the other hand, these studies do not prove that anyone can have an out-of-body experience, that the ability to leave the body can be nurtured or learned, or that the OBE is unrelated to the possession of psychic ability in general. And since we have no idea how widespread psychic ability is dispersed among the general public, whether the OBE is a normal human potential as opposed to a particular psychic talent is a mood point. It's not a psychic talent. I never thought it was. I don't even believe, personally, I don't believe in psychic talents. I think that everybody has the ability to do these things. I just don't think that, you know. Thank you. I don't think that there's a way to study it. There's no way that you can tell a person, or not tell a person. There's no way to figure this out. There's no way to scientifically do this. And this is the problem. This is why we're not getting anywhere, because you have to do this for yourself. And not all of the people that are going to try to do this are going to talk about it. So we don't know. We'll never get this scientific backing that it deserves. And I don't care about that. Like yesterday, what I was talking about wasn't about, I would love for the scientific community to take it more seriously. Absolutely. But it's not about that, man. It's about it being in the mainstream more. Right now, the only thing that's making it on the bigger podcasts and the bigger shows, and nobody cares about TV and like network television. I'm talking about the mainstream or bigger shows and things like that when it comes to podcasting and YouTube. Right now, the big thing is the UFOs and ancient history and cover-ups, right? That's great. This needs to be on the forefront. That's what I was trying to say. Stop trying to, try to get it to be a scientific thing. Doesn't matter at this point about that. But let's continue this thing here. So there are some evidence collected by researchers in the United States, which is done to show that the out-of-body experience probably is a human potential, not a talent or a hereditary gift. And this view comes from two totally different lines of evidence. The first is an outgrowth of a lengthy and detailed research project undertaken by a team of psychiatrists and psychologists in Kansas. Never heard of this, by the way. We need to look into this, though. Dr. Glenn Gabbard of the Menninger Foundation in Topeka, Dr. Stuart Twemlow of the Topeka VA Medical Center, and Dr. Fowler Jones of the University of Kansas Medical Center became interested in the out-of-body experience in the late 1970s. They began collecting accounts from people who had experienced it. They also began studying the reporters themselves and presented their first batch of findings at the annual convention of the American Psychiatric Association in May of 1980 in San Francisco. These three researchers reported on several different phases of their work, including how they attempted to map out the characteristics of the out-of-body experience, how they tried to determine if a person was capable of experiencing this phenomena in which is psychologically different from most other people, and whether the out-of-body experience can be explained psychiatrically. And they received a variety of answers to these questions, but the data in general indicate that the OBE is a widespread human potential and that anybody is capable of doing it. The researchers explained that their research began in February of 1976 when Dr. Twemlow was interviewed about his interest in the out-of-body experience for the National Enquirer. And as part of the interview, the psychiatrist asked any readers who had experienced the OBE to write to him. He received 1,500 letters in response, and 700 of his correspondences described rather typical out-of-body experiences. There was a government employee who wrote to Twemlow about an out-of-body experience he had when he was 10 years old. This is what he said. He said, quote, "I was living together with my older brother at my uncle's house, which was a major in the U.S. Army Medical Corps. And one day I was reclined on my bed, quite awake, and was looking at the ceiling beams of the old Spanish building where the living quarters were located. I was saying to myself many, many questions, such as, what was I doing there, and who was I? And all of a sudden, I got up from the bed and started walking towards the next room. At the moment, I felt a strange sensation in me. It was a sensation of weightlessness and a strange mix of a sense of feeling of joy. I turned back in my steps in order to go back to the bed when I came, and to my surprise, I saw myself reclined on the bed. And this surprising experience at the very small age gave me the kind of jerk, which is to say, shook me back to my body." That's perfect. Sorry, I'm got allergies or something, but What are you saying? Purple Pencil says, I've always seen this from the outside, like seeing people powerless and helpless, but like God is in you. Like you got to meet him halfway in the temple, own up to your shit and be you. Yeah, man, for sure. And, you know, when you start asking questions, just like that 10-year-old kid did, that's how this stuff starts. That's how initiation starts. Like, I remember when I was little, I used to lay in the bathtub, right? And I would stare at my feet. I did this all the time because it would trip me out. I would get so relaxed in the bathtub. I would stare at my toes for so long without blinking. You know how you can get in that crazy, like that crazy trance state where you're staring and you don't have to blink. You just got to that, I don't know how to explain it, that perfect gaze where you don't have to blink. I would get there and I would stare at my toes and I would stare and just get so relaxed and so focused that shit would just start to disappear. Like reality itself, I don't know if it was an optical illusion or something, but it seemed like reality itself would just start collapsing, you know, around me. Like my eyes just decided not to work anymore or something. I don't know how to explain it. And I think I was on the verge of having OBEs back then. But when I would get to that kind of numb, paralyzed state in the tub, it would kind of freak me out. In the tub it did. So I would just, you know, shake myself off. But I think this kid right here was just chilling, man. He was just chilling in his recliner on his bed or something and started asking big questions, even at 10 years old. And the next thing you know, he turns around and he's walking around in his, his astral form. Trance of... What's up, Domek? What's up, brother? A trance of tranquility, a zeal of Zen. Yeah. It's really like becoming one with everything when you just clear the mind, let go, and just stare. And it's so relaxing, actually. Dr. Trimlow was not satisfied with merely with these cases. He was not satisfied merely with these raw cases. He subsequently contacted each of his correspondents by mail, asked them to complete various questionnaires and psychological profiles, and analyze the results. By using these procedures, he was able to collect and analyze some 339 cases of out-of-body experience. This database, he told his colleagues at the APA meeting, allowed him to determine what factors seem to precipitate OBEs, what characteristics they share, and what kind of people tend to have them or at least report them. The results of Twimlow's initial survey closely resembled that many previous researchers have discovered. See, this is what I'm talking about, man. This doctor right here was so passionate about finding the answers to this that he studied and he looked over 339 cases. We got to find all their research because this is how we get to the answers, right? It ain't following some bigwigs on YouTube and taking their courses. I'm not saying their courses don't work. They definitely do. But if we can look at all this research from all these different people since, I don't know, man, since like the 1920s, we can see the parallels of all this stuff for ourselves, you know? We can get down to some bigger answers. Most of his correspondences, 79%, they were all in a calm and relaxed state when they had their spontaneous, quote, astral flights, while his other correspondences had their experiences during childbirth as a result of anesthesia or during bouts of extreme pain. He was able to determine that people who have practiced meditation seem particularly prone to spontaneous OBEs. The fact that 79% of these respondents were under no crisis, no threat, no illness at the time, that indicates that the out-of-body experience may well be a very normal human experience and not something catalyzed under unusual or life-threatening circumstances. The types of experiences his informants apparently underwent were also fairly representative of the OB in general, and most of them told how they initially heard odd roaring sounds in their ears before undergoing their OBs. I've never heard that, though. Not the roaring stuff, but a lot of people have talked about it on this show, too. Um, so most of them heard odd roaring sounds in their ears before undergoing their OBEs, felt themselves leaving their bodies and seeing them left behind, passed through walls as they projected, and experienced other near legendary aspects of out of body travel. And what particularly struck the researchers, however, was the general naivety of their correspondences about the OBE. Here's a quotation. It was significant that approximately 1/3 of the sample had not expected in any way to have such an experience. These were all kind of random OBEs, which is usually when it works, right? When you're not trying to do it. The Kansas psychiatrists reported as part of their presentations, and did not admit expecting or even knowing about such experiences. So these people, most of them, when they had them, it was random. They weren't trying to have them. They were just chilling, relaxing, meditating, whatever. And either one, they didn't talk about it afterwards. They didn't admit to it, or they didn't even know that such experiences were a thing. So how did these people react to their OBs? Most of them loved them. The psychiatrist reported that a whopping 85% of those who took part in the survey described the experience as pleasant, and over half of them described it as joyful. This finding certainly indicates that the out-of-body experience is an experience that we should nurture and that will probably bring great satisfaction to our physical and spiritual lives. Yeah, it will evolve us, for sure. The experience also seems to have profoundly affected the way in which many of the reporters viewed both life and death. Yeah, it starts to take away that fear. And once you start to take away that fear, it starts to change your life. Over 2/3 of them explained that the experience had helped alleviate their fear of death and encourage their belief in the afterlife. Fully 43% of the subjects considered it to be the greatest thing that ever happened to them. Y'all, remember, like this is back in the 80s, man. 70s and 80s. The psychiatrists told their colleagues that this was the greatest thing that ever happened to them. There's lots of things that can happen to you in your life. Other than my son being born, my first OBE, the one that I'm telling you guys is not a dream. It's not none of that shit everybody's trying to say it might be. It's not that. That was the greatest thing, that it changed my life. Most of them wanted to try it again, and the 3 researchers were also impressed by the fact that most of those questioned were absolutely certain they were not dreaming when they had their OBEs. But does it take a special type of person to undergo an out-of-body experience? No, but this question was a natural one for the psychiatrist to explore. And having been trained in the study of the human personality and mind, the Kansas team soon wondered if a person who has had an OBE, or who is at least capable of experiencing one, is somehow psychologically different from most other people. Many parapsychologists who have studied the OBE have wondered the same thing, but the Kansas researchers are the first scientists to actually attempt an empirical exploration of this question. Now, it should be said, we should know this too now, that there is nobody special. There's nobody that doesn't have these capabilities. It's just some people are tapped into it more than others, or some people want to be. I'm not saying some people aren't born with the capabilities more than others. I mean, I think that's a thing too. But every one of us have this capability. So in light of the overwhelming response to Tremlow's press interview, Jones and Gabbard had no lack of subjects to study. They sent out detailed questionnaires to these people in an attempt to find the answers of questions like this. Do people who have OBEs have particularly active imaginations? Are they more hysterical or psychotic than most people? Are they actually better adjusted than most people? It was not difficult to answer these questions after the questionnaires were returned. They were able to collect the information from about 80 of their correspondents, which answered the questions most concisely. And here's the conclusion. Pardon, people who have out-of-body experiences are just like everyone else. They tend to be fairly well adjusted and otherwise very unexceptional. They're not super spiritual gurus or super exceptional people or anything like that. Such psychological findings are very important for lots of reasons. And chief among these is that psychiatrists have often thought that people who reported out-of-body experiences they usually thought, that they were mentally ill or at least headed in that direction. If the cheese hasn't slid all the way off the cracker, it's about to. That boy is talking about OBEs. That's what they used to say. The pioneering work of Twemlow, Gabbard, and Jones has shown that the out-of-body experiences is in no way the product of a disturbed mind. Now, back to my point that I was talking about yesterday. Have any of you guys heard about this research? Some of you I know are my age, but it doesn't matter. You don't have to be my age. Have any of you heard about this experiment, these experiments these doctors did in the 70s and 80s? All these conclusions that they came up with, did this ever reach the public, the news, anything? I mean, this was happening during the Monroe era. I think, Monroe kind of took over the scene there, but have any of you ever heard of these people? If you have, it's okay. Maybe I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's like I didn't do my research, and lots of people have heard about this research that happened in the 70s and 80s, but I haven't heard of it. And I feel like I've studied this subject pretty well, honestly. Why is that? We'll get deeper into this. This book starts out getting into these statistics about this to make a point, and also gives us some more information that we can go check out and research too. We have to do the top of the hour thing to take care of the Fringe FM, the licensing for the music. So to all of the hosts that get to play on the Fringe FM that pay their dues, thank you very much for supporting the station. All of the people that support the Fringe FM, thank you very much. And we got to take a short break so we can keep playing what we want. We play what we want, damn it. We say what we want on the Fringe FM. So even if they throw us off of YouTube or wherever they're going to throw the show off of, if we happen to piss somebody off, we'll always be there. Be right back.
Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Do you want to know the truth? Are UFOs real? Are aliens visiting Earth? Are governments around the world hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO Seekers, official partner of the Fringe FM, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Join us as we investigate locations like Area 51 by subscribing on YouTube at youtube.com/UFO Seekers.
For the next 60 seconds, this station will be conducting a test.
And we're live here outside the Perez family home, just waiting for the... And there they go, almost on time this morning. Mom is coming out the front door strong with a double-arm kid carry. Looks like Dad has the bags. Daughter is bringing up the rear. Oh, but the diaper bag wasn't closed. Diapers and toys are everywhere. Ooh, but Mom has just nailed the perfect car seat buckle for the toddler. And now the eldest daughter, who looks to be about 9 or 10, has secured herself in the booster seat. Dad zips the bag closed, and they're off. But looks like Mom doesn't realize her coffee cup is still on the roof of the car. And there it goes. Oh, that's a shame. That mug was a fam favorite.
Don't sweat the small stuff. Just nail the big stuff. Like making sure your kids are buckled correctly in the right seat for their age and size. Learn more at nhtsa.gov/the right seat.
Visit nhtsa.gov/the
right seat.
Brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Look through your children's eyes to see the true magic of a forest. It's a storybook world for them. You look and see a tree. They see the wrinkled face of a wizard with arms outstretched to the sky. They see treasure in pebbles. They see a windy path that could lead to adventure. And they see you, their fearless guide through this fascinating world.
Find a forest near you and start exploring at discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the United States Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Have you ever wondered, what do the stars say for me? Or, will the next month or the next year be more favorable? How about, are our two signs compatible? Each month, at the new moon, you can ask these questions live with me, your astrologer psychic, Mary DeCina, along with host of Lighting the Void, Joe Root. Join us at the new moon for Cosmic Conditions. We look forward to working with your energy.
Every new moon at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, right here on Fringe FM.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Studios, all the way from the Deep South. Now, here is your host, Joe Root.
I wouldn't make it a habit calling me that, son.
Welcome back to Lighting the Void Radio here live on Fringe FM, YouTube, TalkStream Live, the Paranormal Radio app. Tune in, Live 365. Big shout out to everybody in the chat room. Seeing the fam here every night. It's cool. I'm going to start, you know what I'm going to start doing? We're going to start doing giveaways for the lurkers. That's what we should do. I know you're there, you know. Bumping, it's always a good late night talking about out-of-body experiences, listening to late night synthwave and rave music and weird music that I put on, right? This little Miss Monique, one of my favorite DJs, by the way. Not only do I love her energy, I love her personality, and you guys should go check her out if you haven't seen her. She's pushing her light and energy across the world right now. I think she just came out with another track, too, So what are we learning from this book tonight that we're studying? This book, at the very least, is showing us that there was research other than just, what happened at the Monroe Institute. according to D. Scott Rogo. There was all kinds of people talking about this stuff, researching this stuff in the 70s and the 80s. It blew by us. We didn't hear about it. We didn't get to talk about it. No one knew. But psychiatry, just like we were talking about yesterday, psychiatry and psychologists, some of them are even today, not all of them, but some of them today are even still trying to say that this is some kind of personality disorder. That is some kind of even medical condition. They'll say that too, you know. This research that was conducted back then found out that all of us can have this experience, and that some people weren't talking about it because they were scared. They were scared people were going to say they were crazy. They were scared they were going to get locked up, or they just didn't think, you know, anybody would want to talk about it. And they also found out that there is no exceptional people that can have out-of-body experiences, that every single one of us are capable of this. This wasn't just conducted by random people like me. I consider myself like a random truth seeker or a random researcher, you know. But that's okay. This was conducted by doctors, psychiatrists, psychologists. Now, here's why this is important. It goes along with what we were talking about yesterday. Chief among these is that psychiatrists have often thought that people who report out-of-body experiences are either mentally ill or at least headed in that direction, right? So the work of Twemlow, Gabbard, and Jones it's shown us that in no way is the out-of-body experience a product of a disturbed mind or a mental health condition. It's especially noteworthy to find that most of the subjects turned out to be extremely well adjusted. That's what we said earlier, right? They also felt that the out-of-body experience was a pleasant, non-anxiety provoking adventure. So I guess the bigger question to ask is, has this changed? I don't think so. You know, I've been on a variety of Domek says I'm a lurker. You're no lurker, brother, at all. I've been on a variety of shows and talked to a lot of cool, I would say smaller shows like mine. And some of these hosts are fantastic people, man. They're cool. And I hope and wish success for all of them. They deserve to grow because they're talking about these subjects, and that's great. But in no way has anybody ever treated me like I was some kind of psychologically disturbed person. Only on that one mainstream comedy show that I was on. You know, someone said that I was a schizophrenic or something like that. But they're still saying this stuff today, man. Anyways, I did that rant yesterday. I don't want to go into that rant again. What I want to do is show you by what we're talking about today. They already proved that this isn't like a thing, you know, that people have mental illnesses. So the pioneering work of Twemlow, Gabbard, and Jones has shown that the out-of-body experience is in no way the product of a disturbed mind, and that people said it promoted non-anxiety and thought-provoking adventure. Being clinicians by training, the Kansas team members are very well aware of the implications that the research holds for the psychiatric community in general, and they argued throughout their presentations that the out-of-body experience can no longer be considered any form of aberrant experience. Now, how do you think that went over? You think these three stood up in front of a panel of psychiatrists and psychologists and said, this is a normal thing that humans are capable of, and it's not a psychological disorder? The psychiatrist even devoted one of their 3 APA presentations to this very issue, and they surveyed what they had learned about the OBE by comparing it to several anomalous psychological experiences, sometime reported by mental patients. They showed that none of these aberrant mental experiences could subsume the classical OBE. They focused their attention especially on such clinical phenomena as depersonalization, autoscopy, and the distortion of body image. It's so crazy that they're saying that in some of these psychological magazines online, they're still saying the same thing. Depersonalization, autoscopy, a distortion of body image. Depersonalization, they explain, does not lead one to feel as though he or she has left the body. It doesn't. It's not the same thing. It also usually produces a panic reaction, and the sufferer occurs when the person is anxious or psychologically aroused. This is very different. And they point out from the classical OBE, which is usually a calming and transcending experience. The doctors made a similar case against the idea that the out-of-body experience is a form of autoscopy, a relatively rare phenomenon in which the sufferer sees his or her own apparition, usually from the chest up, transparent, and mimicking the moves he or she is making with the physical body. And this, too, is all very different from the way OBEs are described. And after surveying the literature on body image distortion, the psychiatrist could find no evidence that specific hallucinations of actually leaving and re-entering the body were characteristics of this type of experience. I wonder why this doesn't work the same way it works in court, right? So if you go into a courtroom and somebody, I'm not saying that lawyers are a good thing or whatever, but if you go into a courtroom and you object to something, all you have to do to get your objection sustained most of the time is bring up a case that happened about the same exact circumstance and that how the case was ruled and for what reason it was ruled and sentenced by. And the judge will sustain it most of the time. Not in this case, though. We don't get the same treatment when it comes to the out-of-body experience. We could go around talking to psychiatrists and psychologists today, and they could say, yeah, it's probably depersonalization, autoscopy, or some kind of psychological illness. And you could say, no, there was a study back in Kansas by 3 psychiatrists during this date with this many people, and this is what they found. It doesn't work the same way. Why is that? Justice, man. We get no justice. The void walkers, none. We will though. It's coming. If Pluto is actually an Aquarius and that energy is as real as they say it is, we will. The persistent issues were raised since the Kansas team were aware that some people having spontaneously experienced an OBE might seek out a psychiatrist for help. Yeah, some of them do. Robert Monroe did. The result might be disastrous, they warned, if the psychiatrist is unfamiliar with the commonness of the OBE, perhaps education as to the nature of the experience and reassurances it is one that others have shared may be more therapeutic to the person having the out-of-body experience than going to a psychologist or a psychiatrist. They told their fellow mental health workers this exact thing. They even hinted that perhaps such a patient would gain more belief by talking to a yogi than to a psychiatrist. I bet that went over well in the panel. In summary, then, the work of the Kansas team has shown that, number one, the out-of-body experience is an experience widespread among the general public. Number two, that it is pleasurable and may even be psychologically advantageous to have one. Number three, that it is a normal human experience. And number four, no special type of person is particularly prone to having one. The natural implications of this research is that we all possess the potential for this travel and to use it in the course of our day-to-day living. But just because we have the capacity to experience an OBE or two, does that mean we can actually learn to do it at will? And this is a tricky and a controversial question. However, my own feeling, and this is his feeling, is that the answer is yes, and that a sizable amount of experimental evidence supports this view. And this is yet a second major line of evidence in support of the human potential view of the outer body experience. Some of the most pertinent experimental research confirming this view has been that of John Palmer at John F. Kennedy University in Orinda, California. Never heard of this guy. Why? We got to talk to these people. I hope they're still alive. They probably aren't, but you never know. Dr. Palmer had begun experimentally studying the out-of-body experience during the mid-1970s when he was a research associate at the University of Virginia. And Palmer has long argued that if the OBE is a human potential, it should be possible to induce the experience and volunteer subjects by having them follow certain training procedures. He was impressed by the fact that many of those very special people who can voluntarily undergo OBEs begin by relaxing, entering into an OBE conducive state of altered consciousness, and then imagine themselves leaving the body as a prelude to inducing the experience. So the young psychologist began training people in these procedures. Oh boy. His project led to some curious success. Dr. Palmer conducted his first experiment at the University of Virginia by testing 60 students who claimed no particular psychic ability. He met with the students individually, briefed them about the ability to develop the OBE, then recruited them for the experiment. Can you imagine being a student back in the 70s? And this guy comes up to you and says, hey, listen, I got this experiment I want to do. I'm jealous, by the way. I would have loved to have been a student then. So I believe that people can leave their bodies. And I'm going to grab 60 of you to see if this is a real thing. Would you be interested in being a test subject? Man, I'd have been like, hell yeah. Absolutely. As long as you don't, as long as you don't violate my rights or stick me with anything, I'm good. He met with the students individually, briefed them about the ability to develop the OB, and then recruited them. The idea behind the initial meeting was to encourage the students to believe that they could induce the experience by following certain training procedures. And each subject was then taken to a lab room where he or she was shown a table upon which a picture was to be placed during the upcoming test. The student was asked to orient him or herself to the room, since he or she would later be asked to journey there while out of body. The volunteer was then taken to another room, placed in a chair, and taught how to relax completely by progressively tensing and releasing each muscle group of the body. Then the volunteer was subjected to a state of mild disorientation. A monotonous sine wave tone was played into the subject's ears through headphones, while he or she was made to stare into a rotating spiral vortex disc. I think I have a picture of that. Do I have a picture of that? Oh, yeah, I do. Hold on. Where is this thing? I'm going to find it. So there's a picture of this very experiment in these slides. Let's see if I can find it. There it is. Check that out. That's exactly what happened in the 70s. So this is how they tried to induce OBEs back then. I mean, they didn't put that weird head thing on that she's looking at there in the picture, but, you know, they did the relaxation thing, and it's like, okay, I want you to look into this spiraling thing here, and we're going to get you out of body. That's so rad. It is to me. I don't know why that's cool. It's just like something out of a magazine or something, or like a cartoon. So the volunteer was subject to a state of mild disorientation through this. A monotonous sine wave tone was placed into the subject's ears. The student was asked to imagine him or herself leaving the body and entering into the spiral. Imagine yourself going into the middle. If the subject succeeded in inducing an OBE, he or she was then asked to visit the adjoining room. They were told to go to the next lab room and take a look at the picture that had been placed on the table. This part of the test was designed to prove that the volunteer actually had been out of body. Did you know that this technique for inducing out-of-body experiences in the volunteers was quite successful, actually? And when asked if at any time during the experiment it seemed that they were literally out of the body, some 42% of the subjects answered affirmatively. Unfortunately, however, Few of them were successful in correctly describing the target picture, and this was odd since many of the subjects felt that they had seen it. Woo. So, yeah, this is what they were looking at. Hold on. Someone wanted me to pull that up again. This is what they were looking at, this kind of thing. So they were asked to relax, look at that, get out of body, go to the next lab room. You notice the little Lighting the Void logo on the doctor's lab coat there? They were asked to go to the next room and describe the picture. Now they saw here's the weird thing about conscious travel. I know it's kind of frustrating, but it's also very true. People can see stuff like that. But when it comes to the details, for some reason, our etheric double cannot see it. As an example, for instance, when Robert Monroe got out of body, when he went to his neighbor's house, do you guys remember that? He went to his neighbor's house. He witnessed what his neighbors were doing. He saw them in the yard. He saw them eating breakfast at the table. And while he was there in his etheric double, he described them putting out playing cards. That's what his double saw. Oh, the wife is handing out playing cards at the breakfast table. Later, when he confirmed what she was actually handing out at the table wasn't playing cards, it was mail. It was the mail, which makes more sense than playing cards, right? So, the same kind of thing happened to these test subjects. These test subjects could get out of body back in the 70s. They could go to the other room. They could see the picture on the table. But when they went to look at the picture and describe what was on the picture, it wasn't very successful. That's a mystery still. I don't know why that is. That's something we need to figure out. Few of them were successful in correctly describing the target picture. And this was odd, since many of them, most of them, said they saw the picture, though. Palmer soon replicated his experiment by testing another 40 additional subjects, also conducted at the University of Virginia, and this research project was designed along the lines of the first experiment, but several refinements were introduced. The subjects for this test were first relaxed through the use of progressive muscle relaxation, but Palmer did away with that spiraling disc. Instead, he taped halved ping pong balls over the students' eyes and had them stare into a red light. Holy shit. White noise was played into their ears through headphones. This setting, technically called Gansfeld stimulation, is known to produce sight disorientation and daydream-like imagery. Palmer felt that this state of sensory isolation might be more powerful than the spiraling disc in helping his subjects feel as if they were leaving the body. As in his first experiment, he also instructed his volunteers to visit the adjoining lab room and see what picture had been placed on the table. As an added part of the experiment, however, Dr. Palmer instructed only 20 of his subjects actually to leave the body during the test. The others were just asked to imagine the picture in the next room. Now, this precaution was taken to discover the relative roles that the out-of-body travel and normal ESP might play in the experiment. The results of this test were more straightforward than Palmer obtained during his first experiment. No fewer than 13 out of the 20 subjects who were specifically told to leave their bodies during the Gansfeld stimulation reported OBEs. However, 4 of the control group reported spontaneous OBEs. It means they weren't told to get out of body, it just happened. The subjects who reported the OBEs tended to describe the target picture with some degree of success and more consistently than did the other volunteers. So this would indicate, of course, that during the test, these people really had been able to leave their bodies and visit the next room. Yes, they could do that. This is what I'm talking about. See, this is real experimentation. I mean, we all got to get like a God helmet and do the same thing, right? I don't want to do the spiraling disc thing. I don't want to do, half ping pong balls over my eyes, but I'll definitely try out that God helmet. So Dr. Palmer conducted yet a third experiment in which he used a vibrating chair during the induction procedures, along with the Gansfield stimulation, which is another, half ping pong balls, lights in the middle, white noise in the ear. And since many people who have had OBEs report that their bodies vibrated before they left their body, like through an electrical current, Palmer thought that producing this sensation artificially might help induce the experience. And he was right. During the upcoming experiments, he tested 40 subjects with this new technique, and nearly half of them reported OBEs. We all got to get a massage chair or a vibrating chair. That'll help us. Now, it could be argued that Palmer subjects were merely imagining that they had left their bodies and didn't really have an experience. However, that wouldn't explain the results of the experiment. Some of the subjects reported experiences virtually indistinguishable from the types of spontaneous OBEs that people report as a result of accident or while they're going to sleep. For example, one subject described how he suddenly became aware of being out of body. At first, during the relaxation, he said to Palmer, I felt like a rush of excitement, sort of, and I felt completely detached from everything. And then, when I was supposed to be trying to leave my body, my mind became very alert and analytical, and I felt in a box, sort of, inside of a dead body. This continued the whole way through the experiment, and when it was over, I felt a big come down when the tape clicked off. I felt sort of the whole way through also like I could see my whole body down beneath me in the chair, and once I felt like my mind was in a yellow glow right above my eyes, close to my head, and it was me, but I could also see it. And I tried to imagine the room with myself in it, and I felt like I was very wide awake seeing the room. And there is an impression of a picture of a blue-green and bright reddish-brown on the picture, but that could be a picture I just had in my mind. Other subjects reported initial sensations of leaving the body, reminiscent of the way some people describe the onset of spontaneous OBEs. One of Palmer's students said that I had a sense of sliding out of the back of the chair. I seemed to be still in my body, but there was a definite sense of motion of 2 or 3 feet back. That's his etheric double slipping out. In a second, I just seemed to raise up a bit, a floating sense, like in a tub of water. Now, partially as a result of his project, Dr. Palmer has come to several conclusions about the nature of the out-of-body experience. He believes that it is indeed possible to induce the experience and that several states of altered attention, such as sensory isolation and relaxation, seem related to it. He also considers that certain psychological factors help people to experience the state. He was struck by the fact that those subjects who were especially told to have or expect an OB as a result of the induction procedures had them more frequently than subjects who were not instructed to have them. This finding was quite clear in his second major experiment, and this has led Palmer to conclude that psychological expectation is a key factor in people to induce OBEs. In other words, are y'all ready for this? If you believe a certain technique will work, then it probably will. That goes back to the power of belief. But if the OBE is a potential, why doesn't everyone experience this? Why didn't all of the subjects have out-of-body experiences? And as pointed out at the beginning of this chapter, why is only 1 person in 5 likely to undergo this adventure during their lifetime? There must be some hidden factor that determines who will and who will not find themselves or herself leaving the body. Even the procedures Palmer worked out at the University of Virginia induced OBEs in only about half the subjects he tested. Why did the others fail? One possible solution to this puzzle came to light in August of 1978 when Palmer addressed a convention of parapsychologists at Washington University in St. Louis. He reported that toward the end of his University of Virginia project, he had started monitoring the brain waves of his volunteers, hoping to determine if any brainwave changes occur when a person experiences an OBE. And guess what? Palmer made a surprising discovery. Subjects whose brainwave patterns showed an abundance of theta waves while they were preparing for the experiment invariably reported OBEs during the forthcoming test. Palmer explained that during the course of his work, he came across 3 subjects who showed over 30% theta in their resting partial EEGs, and all 3 subjects had OBEs as a result of his induction procedures. Now, this was too much of a coincidence to overlook, but just what is so special about theta waves? Theta waves are perhaps the most mysterious of the brain's rhythms. This will make you wonder that if Robert Monroe actually looked into this research. We'll probably find out about this later. So theta waves are perhaps the most mysterious of the brain's rhythms. We know that the brain constantly produces small electrical pulsations, which can be monitored by placing electrodes on the scalp. The resulting tracings are then graphed out by an electroencephalograph. An electroencephalograph. Man, they got to come up with an easier word for that thing. Let's just call it a doohickey. These waves are grouped into 4 categories. The most predominant is the beta wave, which registers between 14 to 30 cycles per second and accompanies any sort of intellectual activity such as problem solving. When we relax and clear our minds, our brain waves slow down to between 8 to 12 cycles, and these are called alpha waves. Delta waves are even lower, 1 to 2, maybe 3 cycles, and usually appear during sleep, and they indicate brain pathology when they occur in a waking EEG. But the uncommon theta waves, which come between alpha and delta waves at 4 to 7 cycles, seem to manifest when a person is involved in a deep alteration of consciousness. Intense creative exercises or yogic meditation seems to induce them, and they also occur when an individual attempts to create intense mental imagery or when deliberately inducing an altered state of consciousness. Palmer's discovery indicates that a naturally relaxed and meditative individual may particularly prone to having OBEs, and it may be that those with a natural ability to clear their minds and alter their attention away from the outside world might also possess the ability to leave the body. So, if we, when we're in the hypnagogic state, I wonder if that is theta waves. I bet it is. Because it's what? Was it between alpha and delta? Is that what it was between? 1 to 2, 3, that's delta. 1 to 3 cycles. Yeah. And 8 to 12 are alpha. So theta is between delta and alpha. Okay. So this discovery of theta waves holds out a very special promise to people who wish to induce this experience. It's possible to learn how to generate theta waves through biofeedback, and nurturing such a capability may lead to the development of OBE skills. Now, I'm sorry, y'all, this is more kind of analytical and scientific, but I think this is massively important. For those that want to, correlate everything to some woo kind of spiritual thing, I get that. Because we don't understand it, and it definitely is spiritual, in my opinion, but this stuff's important to look at, too. So Dr. Elmer Green had been studying biofeedback techniques for several years in Topeka, Kansas, at the Menninger Foundation, an institute devoted solely to psychological research. He has had a singular success in teaching people to control their brain waves, including theta waves. In fact, Green was publicly stated that people who develop control over theta waves start having psychic experiences too as a result, and perhaps this ties in with Palmer's findings. But the discovery that the out-of-body experience may be related to specific brainwave rhythms is one of the most exciting new avenues of potential research on this subject. As Palmer reported during his Washington University presentation, quote, and this is what he said during the presentation, If this relationship should bear out in future research, it may be possible to develop biofeedback techniques to either facilitate OBEs or to prevent their spontaneous occurrence in persons who wish to be rid of them. Because, yes, there are people that actually get out of body so much that they just want it to stop. I can't imagine that, but because it'd be way too cool. But some people do. It's kind of rare. Future research is obviously needed to resolve the issue, and it may seem as though these various findings and surveys are a mishmash of unrelated data, but such is not the case. A very careful scrutiny of these recent explorations into the phenomena of the out-of-body experience reveals several mutually consistent discoveries. In summing up, one might say that no particular type of person is especially prone to having them, and that specific induction techniques can aid the individual who wishes to undergo one. Moreover, the chances of having an out-of-body experience are increased if one can learn to control the electrical pulsations of the brain. So, when you listen to the beginning stages of the Gateway experience or the Monroe Institute stuff, the first things that he does is that he relaxes you. So he plays these ocean waves. Robert Monroe does. And this was free, by the way. You can listen to this on YouTube. But he plays these ocean waves and he tells you that these are like energy waves. Everything is energy. Even you have these energy waves inside of you. And if you listen carefully, he induces tones, which we hear, a little bit of white noise, and like a slow pulsating white noise along with the waves. So we could say that Robert Monroe and Thomas Campbell and everyone that was doing that research at the Monroe Institute back in the day took all of the research, put it together, and tried to induce these theta waves. And also, by using HemiSync, helped us get there, I think. And if you look at the research hard enough, you'll find that this is probably true. Now, the old occult school of thought was that the out-of-body travel could be dangerous, and people are still talking about that today. This view especially promoted by Hugh Calloway, which fits in with his beliefs that astral travel is only limited to a special few people, such as himself, of course, who are well along the often treacherous path of spiritual enlightenment. In one of his occult review pieces, he wrote that, quote, "Though I do know that some of the symptoms of leaving the body are painful and extremely unpleasant, I have no evidence that they are really as dangerous as they feel or injurious to the health of the experimenter." Calloway suggested nonetheless that nervous people and those with weak hearts should stay clear of experimenting with astral projection. He also held out the possibility that heart failure, insanity, cerebral hemorrhage, injurious effects on returning to the body, and obsession by disincarnate beings result from the practice. Some people shouldn't, be writing books, maybe. I don't know. I'm not into book burning, so whatever. However, it is important to note that Calloway based his views on the occult beliefs common in his day and culture and had no actual evidence that any of these horrible catastrophes awaited the out-of-body voyager. A case was reported in the press some years ago of a youth found dead in his room after experimenting with out-of-body travel. His friends claimed that he had voluntarily left his body permanently. But an autopsy revealed a more material cause of his death. Guess what he died of? A drug overdose. It's only fair to note, however, that in the 1932 book, The Maniac, the authoress E. Thelmar claimed that a psychotic episode she lived through was a result of her astral projections. The book is fascinating but totally unique in her literature, and the OBEs she reported could have been unrelated to her temporary psychosis or may have only catalyzed a pre-existing condition. I mean, well, look, we can't count out, we can't count out people that actually do have mental illness. For instance, if you're a schizophrenic or a manic depressive or something like that, I mean, I would take a little bit more caution when it came to have an OBE or experiment with your psyche in any kind of way. I would focus on getting healthy first, maybe, or something, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know, but I can tell you from my experiences, though, that fearful people and paranoid people, so the fearful people, the paranoid people, the untrusting people, the nervous people, yeah, they usually have the worst experiences, but they have the worst experiences with everything. Especially everything that's out of the ordinary or that's considered not normal or not comfortable. They freak out about everything. Not judging or anything, but that's not something that you could look at and even put into the science experiment, you know. So the author says, well, I began my own experimentation with astral projection as a teenager. I was greatly influenced by the writings of such grand masters as Calloway, Foran, and Muldoon, and unquestioningly abided by their dictums that mind travel could be fraught with all sorts of physical, mental, and spiritual dangers. I had indeed experienced some unpleasant side effects from my own experiences. So when I first began describing various techniques for inducing the out-of-body state in an article for Fate magazine in 1973, it said that astral projection is actually dangerous for very basic physiological and psychological reasons. I argued that experimenting with the out-of-body travel could be injurious to the body's normal homeostatic functions. And I was especially concerned about how these induction techniques could affect oxygen supply to the brain, which is the normal regulation of the heartbeat and so on. Now, looking back on my experiences, about which I will speak in more detail later, I think my attitude was rather reactionary and naive. So he's manning up here. He's saying, hey, I was wrong. Astral projection is not an occult experience that only self-selected initiates should nurture for the purpose of spiritual advancement. It's a normal, healthy experience that anyone, doctor, lawyer, or candlestick maker, has the capacity to undergo. And since it is so normal, it is very unlikely that there are any dangers inherent in this practice. And remember that the Kansas team found that the overwhelming majority of those polled reported their OBEs as enjoyable. And indeed, many wanted to have more experiences. And some people were scared by their sudden releases from the body, but there's a huge difference between an event experienced as frightening and one that is objectively dangerous. In most cases, the fright was just a psychological reaction to the out-of-body experience, not to any inherent danger. Fright reactions are usually experienced by people with no knowledge of the OBE and who are therefore mentally unprepared for undergoing one. Yeah, it's kind of scary, right? That's normal. That's that normal fear that we feel when we do something that we're not used to doing, you know. So he goes on to admit, and I like this. I like people that can be honest with themselves like this. So during my first OBEs, I, too, was frightened by the paralysis that often accompanied the releases, by the way my body just felt hot while I tried to induce them, by the way my heart raced when I returned to the body, and by some other minor side effects. But as I grew more accustomed to the OB state, these experiences receded to the background. Either they no longer manifested when I underwent the OBE, or I simply didn't notice them anymore. It is my own retrospective feeling that many of these side effects are actually caused by the mind and body's resistance to the experience, and they may not be inherent to the experience itself. It's now fairly well known that any procedure that places the mind in a new relationship to the body will have certain side effects for a limited number of people. Even simple meditation can be unpleasant at first, and some individuals go through a period of unpleasant body sensations, tics, and anxiety when they begin meditation. Yeah, for sure. Listen, when I first started, when I had like severe anxiety back in my 20s and stuff, and I was taking these, you know, they had me on all kinds of medications and stuff, but that's because I couldn't relax on my own. I'd forgotten how to relax because from the time I was 14 years old till I was 21, I was taking drugs to relax. So I forgot how to relax. So when I would do these meditations and stuff, or these, I guess you could say, hypnosis experiences that were in the program, when my body would begin to relax, it felt so weird to me that it would trigger. a panic attack almost. I would feel weird. Like it would scare me. But what was happening is I was actually relaxing. And I was so used to being stressed that it felt weird. It felt like something was wrong, you know. So even simple meditation can be unpleasant at first. Some individuals go through a period of unpleasant body sensations, tics, anxiety, and stuff like that when they begin meditation. This isn't common, but it's perfectly normal. This settling down phase usually ceases in time. Then Zen students are even warned that they may go through a period of unpleasant mental imagery as they begin meditation practices. They're advised to simply ignore the images, which will no doubt go away in time. The OBE may be no different in this respect. The mind and body may react unpleasantly at first, but there's no real reason to believe that these side effects are in any way harmful. In my own case, they totally ceased during the first year of my experimentation. Of course, one of the most common questions about the experience is whether someone can get locked out of the body while mind traveling. The answer seems to be no. All of the great astral projectors of the past experimented with prolonging the out-of-body state and most deliberately attempted to remain out of the body even after intuitively felt that it was time to go back. In just about every instance, they found themselves returning to the body involuntarily. So it would seem that the body and mind have their own regulations about how long an OBE can last, and rules that even willful violation cannot override. So all in all, it does not seem that anyone need to be overly concerned about the often touted dangers of astral projection. True dangers probably do not exist. Even the unpleasant side effects probably only occur infrequently. And why else would so many one-timers express the desire to have another crack at it? In my own estimation, the out-of-body experience is a gratifying experience that holds many lessons for us. It demonstrates that the mind is an entity in its own right, something distinct from the brain and body. And I have never met anyone who has had an OBE who is still a materialist. The experience also helps us to gain a greater totality of the universe than we can perceive while locked in the confines of the physical body. And OBEs can also help one overcome the fear of death. And to some, they are the literal demonstration of personal immortality. Other benefits to the OBE will be discussed later, but I have certainly learned much from my own out-of-body experiences, and I think anybody who eventually achieves the ability will say the same. Man, I got to look into this, these references. So, Oliver Fox, he talked about Robert Crookall, Celia Green, Elmer Green. He did bring up Sylvan Muldoon, John Palmer. Who was it? Fowler, Dr. Twemlow. Yeah. Next, he gets into projection through dynamic concentration. This is pretty cool stuff, though. This is more research we can dig into. I think that's pretty rad, actually. But long story short, I find it interesting that they were doing this experiments in Kansas. Psychologists and psychiatrists, this team of Kansas therapists decided to study students. And then when they found that the OBE thing was real, they presented it to a panel of other psychologists. So, you know, yesterday when I was ranting about, hey, man, like we should take this more seriously and stuff, I don't think that's ever going to change. If it hasn't changed by now, I mean, there's enough information on it out there. If it hasn't changed by now, I don't think people are going to care to the level at which, you know, honestly, to the level that people think about aliens, UFOs, or hidden history, or even flat Earth. I don't even think the OBE experience is as popular as things like flat Earth or Tartaria or stuff like that. I do think that it should be, but I already whined and pissed and moaned about that last night. I do think it should be, but maybe it's just never going to change. That's just the way it is. And only people like us are, you know, interested in it. Could be part of the thing. Who knows, right? I don't know. Yeah. So we got to wrap this up. And any of you late nighters or people that live on the other side of the country, we'll be up later tonight, probably streaming other things that aren't radio related or podcast related, but you can still hang out with us. Make sure you join the Discord too. And you can email the show at producer@fringe.fm. You can also call the show anytime, leave a voicemail if you want. You don't have to call just when the show is on. If you want to leave a voicemail or leave a message at 501-777-5631. I think next, if I can't get a hold of Mark. And yes, I went hunting for Mark again today. This is going to turn into one of those projects just to get a freaking interview, which is going to, whatever, it's a part of journalism, I guess, but we'll figure it out. We always do. Oh, yeah. Yeah. All right. We're going to roll out of here. We'll see you guys tomorrow night. Same time, same channel, right here, live on Lighting the Void. Love each and every one of you. Night, sweet dreams, on into the late night. For those of you that aren't going to bed, that can't sleep, if you do have an out-of-body experience, let us know. Good night, you guys. YouTube lurkers and all you radio people.
Tombstones climbing up the sky to claim the boredom and the whine of the radiator, to freeze the fates that intertwine, unresolved and undefined in this echo chamber. Once you've given up the ghost, just like Lazarus, you'll know there's an operator, some strange passenger inside. To that strange power I'm resigned like an iron anchor. I'm just a ghost in your stereo, the fading memory of a shipwreck in the undertow. You're just a lost song I wrote, and I'm just a